Welcome to the Week 13 LA City football video. Connor Morissette and Alex Garr. Alex, happy semifinals week.
Yes, sir. I cannot wait. Every division in the semifinals. We got a bunch of really good games here this Friday. Boy, it's going to be fun.
Let's get things started where you were last Friday at Granada Hills for the open division game of the first round. Birmingham, number 4, against San Fernando, number 5. Birmingham gets the win, proves us wrong. What were your takeaways from that game, and really what an incredible game. It looked like a lot of fun up there.
Yeah, it really was. Battle of the Valley did not disappoint. Birmingham wins this one 20-14. And we were talking about a little bit last week how Birmingham could beat San Fernando. Now, we did have San Fernando in this game. We thought the running game would just be a little too much to handle. But what we thought, Birmingham, their path to victory, throw the football. Beat them on the edge, beat them over the top, and that's exactly what they did. They were able to attack those cornerbacks for San Fernando. Jason Artiga did a fantastic job hitting his receivers, didn't make any mistakes, had a really, really clean game. And credit to that Birmingham defense. We thought Nehemiah Thompson, Kyle Bryant would kind of come in, run all over them. That didn't happen at all. They were really able to kind of bottle them up. 122 yards rushing, or 112 rushing yards actually for both of them. So combined, really great job from the Birmingham defense. Now they get Narbonne, and of course that's going to be a test in its own. But man, this was the game that everyone in the Valley was looking forward to since the summer began. It's just so much fun to see the Valley come out, and people were really, really excited for this game. Hats off to Birmingham, did a great job.
Yeah, and last week we said if Artiga played mistake-free football, Birmingham was going to have a good chance, and that was exactly what happened. So you're right, he deserves a lot of credit. I know you talked to him after that game. He was fantastic. And also, the other takeaway, just kind of echoing what you said, Kyle Bryant and Nehemiah Thompson are two great running backs. To hold them to the amount of yards that they did, that defense deserves credit. And again, just kind of echoing what you said, but we thought that they were going to have more success, and that just didn't happen.
Yeah, they really forced San Fernando to throw the football, and that was going to be the tough thing. You knew if you could get the ball out of the running backs' hands, make them throw the ball, they were going to be in trouble. Birmingham got out to a 14-6 lead, and I think Coach Garcia might have pushed the panic button maybe a little too early. They started throwing the ball, and they just weren't able to get the ball downfield. They couldn't move the ball. They didn't really have much offense there in the second half, although they did kind of get themselves in a position to tie the game. Hats off to that Birmingham defense. We didn't really expect them to come in and shut them down like they did. I mean, the running backs really didn't have a whole lot of ways to go, and like I said, that passing game kind of ended up being non-existent. So Birmingham, hats off to them. Great job.
I think this Birmingham-Narbonne game is going to be closer than the city championship game because I think Birmingham is better than Eagle Rock and Garfield, and probably Carson as well. This win over San Fernando, I think puts Birmingham, right there at number 2. And, of course, we can't really switch the seeds in the middle of the playoffs. The computer said what the computer said. But this win, for me, puts Birmingham at number 2, and it's a shame that they see Narbonne not in the championship, but in the semifinals.
Well, this is kind of what we were talking about all season long. We had Narbonne number 1, and then San Fernando, Birmingham, or Birmingham, San Fernando. That was our 1 through 3, pretty much wire to wire. So we thought these were the 3 best teams in the Valley, or 3 best teams in the city, rather. These 2 teams being from the Valley. And Birmingham, Narbonne, that's kind of a de facto city championship. Of course, it's not. It's going to be Eagle Rock, Garfield versus presumably Narbonne, maybe Birmingham if they pull off a monumental upset. But this is really kind of a test of the 2 top teams here in the city section. So really good job here for Birmingham, and they proved they really are one of the best teams here in the city.
Yeah, so Birmingham will get Narbonne, and they annihilated Venice at home, 67-0.
Yeah.
Luca Diamant, who this guy has an Alabama offer. He's a damn good quarterback. He didn't really look like it against Narbonne, and you can't blame him. 0 touchdowns, 3 picks. On the other side, Jake Garcia had 3 touchdowns and 0 picks, and that was kind of the difference. I don't want to pit the quarterback against the quarterback because the reason those stats look that way has to do with the whole team. But Narbonne, they're clicking at the right time, and we've seen this story before.
Yeah, and 67-0, let's be honest, a lot of things went wrong there for Venice. Chad Johnson Jr., the only offensive player besides Diamant to go over 100 yards. Nobody on the running game really had anything going. And on the Narbonne side, the running backs, they had a fantastic field day. Jawan Collins, 4 carries, had 169 yards and a touchdown. Keyshawn Dupree and Marcy Sietz both had touchdowns. So that defensive backfield for Narbonne, no doubt probably the best defensive backfield Diamant faced all year long, and they came out and absolutely played. And let's be honest, Diamant going into next year, Venice, same thing. They're going to be right back to kind of where they were. Really good team, good quarterback, senior now. Chad Johnson Jr. is going to be back for another year. This is going to be a really explosive offense. When you run into a Narbonne in the first round, it's just a buzzsaw. Not a whole lot you can do.
And at the beginning of the year, Alex, we said that Venice had a good chance to be in the Open Division semifinals because of that talent. And we might have just been a year too soon with them. I think looking to next year, as you said, they return a lot of guys, and the expectation next year, make the Open Division this year. Next year, they should expect to make the semifinals because they're too talented.
Yeah, and they could have gotten the semifinals if they got a different draw or if Western League play went a little bit differently. Let's remember they stubbed their toe against Palisades, had a really tough game there in the Western League, weren't able to put themselves in a position to avoid Narbonne in the first round. So when you draw that 8 seed, you're playing Narbonne game 1, that's going to be really, really tough. Put them on the other side of the bracket if they're playing Carson, maybe Garfield or Eagle Rock, who knows, maybe that's a different scenario. So I think the talent is still there for Venice. It's going to be a lot interesting next year when they have all these guys seniors, another year of play under their belts. But I think, maybe we overrated them just a little bit, but they just got a really tough draw.
On Friday, I was at Eagle Rock for their big 24-21 win over Palisades. First thing before we get into the game, congrats to Eagle Rock. Last year in Division II, they didn't even make the D2 championship. They were upset by Cleveland. To go from a D2 semifinalist, move up to D1, and then make the Open Division, make an Open Division semifinal all in 1 year, that takes tremendous, tremendous heart, and I was really impressed with that group just because it doesn't usually go like that. Look at what happened. Cleveland gets moved up. They stumble in the first round of the playoffs. Huntington Park gets moved up. They really struggled this year. The teams that moved up had a tough year, but Eagle Rock, they didn't, and they're playing really well. So let's get into the game really quick. It was sloppy, Alex. It was a really good first quarter from Eagle Rock, and then it was back and forth, but a lot of turnovers from both teams, and Eagle Rock just made fewer mistakes and ended up winning the game. That was kind of my initial takeaway. Rayford Turner was the best player, and Ryan Valdez on defense played really well as well. But I wanted to kind of see a better performance, more mistake-free football from both teams, and it was a little bit sloppy.
Well, here's a question for you. We've talked a lot about Nehemiah Thompson probably being the favorite for City Player of the Year, but then we've also talked a ton about Nathan Corrales there at Eagle Rock. Now, if he wants to hang on to that spot, because I'm kind of on the edge of bringing Jason Artiga, kind of bumping him up into that running, what did you see out of Corrales?
So the biggest play of the game came on a 3rd and about 12. It was 3rd and long. And Eagle Rock, their offense was sputtering. Pally kind of had the momentum. They were down 3. It was the end of the game. And Corrales, it was a bad snap, and you thought, oh, he's going to get sacked. This is going to be bad. He somehow picks up the snap, moves around, and gets 15 yards, gets the first down that wins them the game. So that was the biggest play that he made in that one, and that was great. Throwing the ball, he was intercepted by Will Janae, and he made a mistake. We're not going to hold that against him, but it wasn't the greatest throw. He's a leader. He's a good player, but I agree with you. I think Artiga's right up in the middle of that conversation, and I think there are 4 really, really great quarterbacks in the city this year, looking at Luca Diamant and
Bobadilla over there at Franklin as well.
So maybe 5, because I'm including Garcia as well, Bobadilla, and then Corrales and Artiga. So we're kind of hashing out these awards maybe a little bit too soon because it's going to be tough for us to do that. But I think Corrales is still there. He's a great player.
Sounds good. I mean, let's cut out those underclassmen. Let's leave Jake Garcia, Bobadilla, Diamant. Let's give them another year. They still have another year of football. If we just compare those 2 seniors, Corrales and Artiga, like I mentioned, I was really impressed with Artiga, and it sounds like Corrales kind of won the ball game there for Eagle Rock. So we've got some decisions to make here towards the end of the year.
The biggest takeaway from that Eagle Rock game, they can stop the run. And I think that's bad news for Garfield because Garfield is a team that loves to run the ball. Max Paley's had a bunch of carries. He didn't get to 100 yards, didn't get in the end zone. Eagle Rock forced a Palisades fumble on short yardage just outside the goal line, and it looked like Pally was definitely going to score, and they forced a fumble and turned the ball over. So I was impressed with their run defense, and I think as they move on to play against Garfield, a team that loves to run the ball, that's going to be huge. And I'll tip the pick a little bit. I think Eagle Rock, like we did with the bracket, is going to beat Garfield because of their ability to stop the run.
Yeah, and we were kind of complaining about the other side of the bracket, how one side seemed a little bit more overloaded than the other side, but maybe we actually get the best matchup of the playoffs with Eagle Rock and Garfield. As you talked about Garfield, their great running attack. We're going to get to their win in Carson over in a minute, but that great defense, that good run defense from Eagle Rock, the great running game from Garfield, that might be the best game in the city.
So the overall takeaway from Eagle Rock, it wasn't pretty, but they get the job done to move on to the Open Division semifinals, and now they're 1 win away from a state playoff game potentially, which is
huge for
incredible.
the program.
A bowl game is huge, and then you win that, you go to the state championship. So you want to look at Crenshaw last year, that's kind of how you do it. Carson Garfield, Alex. So Carson was ahead 10-7 in the 3rd quarter in this game, but it was 2 touchdowns from P.J. Garcia that ended up giving Garfield the win. You hate to play this game, but if Carson had their full team, they'd probably win this game.
I think
but
so.
Credit to Garfield. They stopped Carson right at the end. 4th down, Yui Ale had I think he tried to scramble, get 10 yards, and they brought him down, turnover on downs, and Garfield won the game. So give them credit. It was a hostile environment. They did well, but remember, Carson didn't have their full team.
Yeah, and like we were talking about, such a shame because we wanted to see both of these teams at full strength. Unfortunately, things kind of were what they were. Can't really control it. Just got to play the cards you're dealt. P.J. Garcia there for Garfield. They gave him the ball 26 times. He responded with 160 yards on the ground, 2 touchdowns. They had 232 yards rushing as a team. So that's going to be a big test there for Eagle Rock. Palisades was able to run the football really well. I think Garfield runs it just a little bit better. Kind of the toughest test here for Eagle Rock, both of these teams actually. And then I got to shout out Nate Duggadillo.
Yeah,
I think maybe 4 or 5 times I've shouted him out this season, but he had 16 total tackles. 13 of them were solo shots, so great job for him.
And Angel Hidalgo had a good game catching the ball. Also on defense, he looked great, so want to make sure he gets a shout out. And this Garfield Eagle Rock game, I think it's going to be really, really tight on Friday. And I guess I'm picking the game now. We'll do that in a little bit. I think it's going to be a close game. Both these teams are really, really good, and they've gotten to this point for a reason. Yeah, a lot of people, a lot of eyes are going to be on that game. I don't know if Narbonne's really going to be too concerned about who they play, but both of these teams, for bragging rights for the program, for a shot to play in a state bowl game, maybe get to a state championship game, a lot is going to be on the line. I think you might be there. It's going to be so much fun. I can't wait to see what happens. Final open division point. How will we remember Carson football this year? I think it's kind of a missed opportunity for them a little bit. Remember, they start the year, they struggle in the non-league, and then they kind of figure it out with a win over San Pedro, and they crush Banning. But then these suspensions after the Narbonne game take effect, and they lose in the first round. You feel bad for the guys who are suspended and for the seniors on that team because they couldn't give the full effort in that playoff game. And I think for Carson, last year, remember, they made the Open Division semifinals. They were 1 win away from a state bowl appearance. This year, they couldn't get to that point. I think it's a year of what could have been for the Colts. Yeah, a little bit. Kind of a forgotten season, a lost season, if you will. They got off to that tough start, and we talked about in a lot of our shows previous, when are we going to see that big-time Carson win? It took them a while to get there. Then, of course, they played Narbonne tight and then just got in a bad situation. Yeah, and that Narbonne game, that shows you how close they were. It was 7-0 at halftime, and then the suspensions occur, or the punt return incident happens, and it kind of gets away from him in the second half. But I think Arnold Ale, he certainly has that program headed in the right direction. Yeah, I think so. I mean, Yui Ale, he's a sophomore quarterback. He's going to be there for a couple more years. He's going to be a really good guy once he gets towards that senior year. We talked about Carson missing out this season. You can't dwell too much on what could have been because that's just going to keep you up at night. It's going to prevent you from growing. So this is going to be a learning year, kind of a progressing year here for the Colts. I expect them to be back 2019. Moving on into Division I, Dorsey hammers Crenshaw, although it was tied at halftime, and they look like the favorite in that tournament. Keyshawn Johnson had a huge game in that one, Alex. Yeah, he ripped off 4 total touchdowns. 3 of them came in the second half. Like you mentioned, 14-14 tie at halftime. I don't know what Coach Bledsoe said in the locker room at half, but Keyshawn really took it to heart. He got fired up, ripped off 3 rushing touchdowns there in the end zone for Dorsey. They went 40-14. They're my pick to win it all here in Division I. I know you've got Fairfax, and they got a semifinal date here this Friday. That's going to be a ton of fun. But the Dons, this is a great win to kind of get you rolling into semifinals. Yep, so you mentioned it. Who will Dorsey play? It's Fairfax, the number 4 team in this tournament, and they struggled with Banning, but they eventually got the win at home. And they had some trouble stopping the run in this game, so watch out. Yes, they did. Because now you go up against a really good running back in Johnson, like we talked about. But Scott Harris was fantastic in this game, probably his best game of the year. 10-14, 211 yards, 3 touchdowns through the air, and then he had over 100 rushing yards and 2 touchdown runs as well. And 5 touchdowns, that's a damn good day, and that's why they won the game. Yeah, we talk about it. Big-time players in big-time games, what do you got to do? You got to make big-time plays. He found Conroy Graham for 4 catches, 113 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And Jake Otto, we talked a lot about this Banning defense, or this Fairfax defense, maybe not quite being up to snuff. Jake Otto had a really tough time throwing the football. Only 8 of 15, only 63 yards through the air, and threw a pick. The rushing yards, that's going to be a problem for the Lions moving into Dorsey. Kearshawn Snelson for Banning had 167 yards. 3 total touchdowns. So that's going to be a thorn in the side as they prepare here for Dorsey. But big game there from Scott Harris. That's the big reason why they won the football game. And when you're comparing quarterbacks, Fairfax, Dorsey, Fairfax has the edge. So if they're able to move the football, it's going to be really good for them. Alex, on the other side, 10 Southgate beat a depleted number 2 Westchester, but it was closer than probably a lot of people thought because remember, Westchester called up a lot of JV guys, 21-12. But Southgate, on to the semifinals, a spot that we didn't think they'd be. No, probably not. And unfortunately, they got a Westchester team that was
was missing 21 dudes. You know, you want to beat a team when they're at full strength, so you can really have those bragging rights. Nothing you can do about that if you're Southgate. You just got to go in, win the game you're in, right? They win 21-12. For Westchester, Jacoby Sims had to play some quarterback. He went 7-13 through a touchdown and a pick. So just you couldn't really cobble together an offense for the Comets. I mean, they were so dependent on Nathaniel Adams and Jillian Carter. Both those guys missed this game. What are you going to do? You know, you got a skeleton squad. Shout out to Southgate for not taking them lightly because it looked like it might have been kind of gone either way. But here they are, Southgate in the semifinals. They get a good San Pedro team, which we're going to talk about in a minute. And you never know. I think we both picked San Pedro, but win the game you're in, always have a puncher's chance.
And you mentioned it, Alex. Southgate will get San Pedro, who upset Reseda. And we've said this all year. If Justin Bernal is healthy and Cam Thomas are healthy, then San Pedro is going to go really far, and they have a great chance to make the championship now, and those guys, they're still healthy.
Yeah, 24-14 victory over Reseda. As you mentioned, Bernal had 2 touchdowns. He found Josh Ward once, found Gerard Braff once. He's just getting the ball to his playmakers. And they didn't have to use Cam Thomas, or at least he didn't get in the end zone in this game, so they still have another weapon that they can deploy here in the semifinal game against Southgate. And for Reseda, we've talked about that top-end talent. Just kind of a disappointing end here for the Regions. We thought they had some really good seniors, Zeke Savage, Alonzo Hall, some really good playmakers. Not really the season you wanted to end it on, but they got some good guys coming back, so the Regions aren't totally done.
And whether it's Fairfax or Dorsey, San Pedro absolutely has a shot to win the D1 championship.
Sure they do.
I think we'll agree on that. In Division 2, number 1 Franklin rolled number 8 Torres 50-28. Alfred Bobadilla threw 3 touchdowns. Had 2 picks in the game, though, and 2 of those touchdowns were caught by Daniel Phillips. Again, I think Franklin marches to the championship, and I don't feel any differently after that game. Torres gave him a good shot, but that offense for Franklin is something else.
Yeah, it really kind of goes as Alfred Bobadilla goes, but we got to shout out Christopher Johnson, 21 carries, 164 yards on the ground. The team rushed for 4 touchdowns on the ground and 297 yards. So the team really does kind of hum on offense. Question is defense. That Torres offense put up 28 points, 4 touchdowns against a team that we think is just going to roll to the finals. If a good offense tests them, that's going to be a really tough game. But for now, when you put up 50, not a lot of teams are going to beat you.
Franklin will get number 5 Locke, who overcame over 200 rushing yards from our leaders, James Ochoa. But they win the ball game, man. And Locke moves on to play Franklin. I don't think that Locke offense will be able to compete with Franklin, but credit to Locke for going to Arleta and upsetting them and getting a semifinal opportunity. That's huge for that program.
Yeah, in the video last week, I said my pen was hovering over Locke. I should have just stuck with my gut.
It was a tough one to pick.
Yeah, I just kind of too much of a weenie. I thought James Ochoa would really take it, and he did. I mean, 42 carries, 42 carries, 205 yards, and 2 touchdowns. You can't ask for anything else from the kid. He might have passed out, needed some oxygen after the game, but shout out to Locke, 28-21 win over Arleta. And yeah, now they get Franklin, biggest test of the year. If they beat him, program is going to be flying high, but it's going to be a real tough test.
Yeah, and then on the other side of the bracket, another tough game for you, Canoga Park.
My Bell Eagles, man.
Survives against Bell. It was 16-0 at halftime. Canoga, Bell scores 2 touchdowns, but then that was it, and they lose 16-14. Canoga's hanging on, and we're going to get to Roosevelt, who they're going to play in a second. But Roosevelt looks like a buzzsaw right now. So Canoga Park, it didn't happen this past week against Bell, but it might happen against Roosevelt. Good for Canoga Park, though. The Hunters had a tough performance in their league, the Valley Mission, but now they're on to the semifinals, so congrats to them.
Yeah, Valley Mission's a real tough league. You got to deal with Reseda and San Fernando. I don't know why I like Bell so much. I just seem to pick. I've never even been there. I haven't met the kids, but I would like to next year. I think I'll definitely head my way out there. Canoga had a 16-0 lead here at half, but Bell took the opening kick of the second half back to the house, and they scored another time. Just couldn't quite push it over. For Canoga, this is a nice emotional victory heading into the semifinal game, but Roosevelt, man. You picked Verdugo Hills. That's going to be a bit tough because they might make it all the way to the finals. Let's get to that game.
Yeah, how dumb do I look? Roosevelt beats Wilson 26-0, and Wilson looked like the second-best offense in Division II, and they don't score a point against Roosevelt. That rushing attack was great, and guess what, Alex? Roosevelt, they didn't throw it too much this year.
They never do.
They completed 1 long pass in this game, and that was kind of just how that game went for them. Everything was working in that one, and I think they have a great chance to beat Canoga Park, and I think there'll be a tough game for Franklin. Just imagine, though, if the championship, if it comes and it's Franklin against Roosevelt, just imagine the crowd at that game.
Yeah.
That's 2 programs that will pack the stands at El Camino College, and I know I shouldn't have allegiances or anything like that, but it would be great to see those two programs play at El Camino College. That would be a fantastic atmosphere.
Yeah, it'll be Nella Sports 1 against Eastside Media TV.
Yes.
Both those guys are going to be out there. That's going to be so much fun. As you mentioned, some really rabid fan bases for both of those teams. Roosevelt, 26-0 over Wilson. Aldo Peral, 2 rushing touchdowns, and then Santos Rivera and Angel Ochoa both had TDs. Wilson shut out for the first time since August of 2017, and that was against Santee, who we think might win Division III. So really tough ending here for the Mules, not where they expected to be.
Shout out Roosevelt, having a great year. Into Division III, you mentioned Santee. They routed Lincoln 70-36. The crazy rushing stat line this week, it's 270 yards and 3 touchdowns for Joseph Todd. But then his teammate outdoes him a little bit, not in the yards department, but Andre Herrera. 5 touchdowns, 177 yards. Santee, they threw the ball once, it was incomplete, but that doesn't matter. When you can run it like that, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and that's what they're doing.
Dude, they scored 70 points on the ground. Who cares? Just keep running the football. As you said, we got to shout out Muen Shu and Henry Gallardo, also scoring touchdowns. These guys did absolutely everything. Joseph Todd, as you mentioned, 270 yards on the ground. Lincoln didn't really stand a chance in this one. Santee doubles their score, and they're on to the semis.
Santee will face Manual Arts, number 5, after Manual Arts upset Gardena 21-12. And in that game, Jalen McElroy was 6 of 11 for 132 yards and 2 touchdowns, and then he rushed for a touchdown as well and had over 100 yards on the ground. Thomas Whitehead caught 2 of those touchdowns. We've seen this game before, so Santee knows how to beat Manual Arts, but sometimes when you play a team the second time around, it's a little bit different. It's the playoffs, more is on the line now. I think this one will be closer, but it's tough for Manual Arts. They got to play the best team in the tournament, and they've already played him this year.
Yeah, when we were picking this game, you said Jalen McElroy would be the difference, so pat on the back
thank
there
you.
for
I mean, he does it all for them.
Does a really good job, and now he's got to really put it all on the line here against Santee. They've already lost to them by a couple of scores here this year, so they know what they're getting themselves into. They got to stop that rushing attack from Todd, but shout out to them. Gardena kept it close. They were able to overcome it, and they're on to the semis.
On the other side of the bracket, it looks a little bit ugly for both of us. We our teams losing the championship both lose here in the second round, so not really ideal. Fremont Fremont beat number 6 Marquez. Fremont was number 3, 40-21. That wasn't even close. And then after, on our video, all the Fremont people
Fremont, after it.
And yeah,
we deserved it. We both picked against them.
They shut us up. And I think they got a great chance to make the championship, so congrats to them. And then on the other side, number 2, Chatsworth rolls over Monroe, 43-26. Oscar Padilla and Alonzo Williams had big games for the Chancellors. But you liked Monroe, I liked Marquez, and
we're both idiots.
Now we're wrong.
Yeah, the twin cam engine, as I so called it, Cam Lord was kind of held in check. 18-31, not the most efficient day. Did throw for 264 yards and a couple of scores. Cam Senegal, only 81 yards on the ground, held under 100 yards rushing for just one of the few times here this season. Chatsworth put up 43 points against a decent Monroe defense. Monroe only able to muster 26. Now they get Fremont, so a battle of some really high-flying offenses. 40 for Fremont, 43 for Chatsworth. Should be a really high-scoring game.
Let's pick some games now, starting in Division III. A couple of these we've already kind of tipped a little bit, but Manual Arts, number 5, at number 1, Santee. I think we both have Santee, correct?
Yeah, I think Santee. We said they're our unanimous pick in Division III. Nothing changes. Joseph Todd's going to, I think, run all over the Toilers. It's a good offense there for Santee. I just don't think anybody stops him.
Number 3, Fremont, at number 2, Chatsworth. This one could go either way. Who do you like?
Well, I've picked against Chatsworth in a lot of things. I picked against them in baseball. I picked against them in football, so I got to go here with Chatsworth. Give them some of the love, the Chancellors. I think they beat Fremont on to the finals.
I'm taking Fremont, and it's because they knocked out the team that I thought was going to make the championship, Marquez, so I'm trying to stay consistent with my bracket. I will take Fremont over Chatsworth. I think that's going to be a really high-scoring, high-flying game, and we disagree on it, so we'll see who advances to the championship there. In Division II, number 5, Locke, at number 1, Franklin.
Can't pick against Franklin, the Panthers. I think they got the best offense here with Wilson out. They kind of have a road paved in gold to a Division II championship, so I think they got this one.
I have Franklin as well. Number 7, Roosevelt, at number 3, Canoga Park. I think I know where you're going.
Give me the Riders. I don't dislike you, Canoga. I promise. Just for whatever reason, I seem to be picking teams against them. Roosevelt may be one of the best rushing attacks they've faced besides San Fernando, so I think the Rough Riders, I think they've got a date in the Division II championships.
I'm taking the Hunters. I want to stay consistent with my bracket. I had them against Franklin in the D2 championship. I'm sticking with it. Give me Canoga Park, although Roosevelt, when am I going to learn my lesson picking against them? They look like the hottest team in the tournament. In Division I, Fairfax at Dorsey. I think we got another disagreement here.
Yeah, I've got to stick with my bracket. I had the Dons winning it all, and nothing changes for me.
I have Fairfax winning it all. Nothing changes for me.
All right.
I'm taking Fairfax. Southgate at San Pedro. Kudos to us. We both had San Pedro, but neither of us had Southgate. No way they win, right?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't want to count them out entirely, but Justin Bernal, great senior quarterback. I just think San Pedro, they've overcome some adversity. They played a really tough Marine League schedule. Pirates are going to win this one.
Pedro, into the open division now. We have our unanimous bracket, or our consensus bracket, excuse me, not unanimous, out on Instagram and on Twitter. We're still alive, even though we picked Birmingham incorrectly. Had San Fernando winning that game, but we both like Narbonne, I'm sure. So for Birmingham at number 1 Narbonne, we still have a chance to get the championship right.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the Gauchos, best team Birmingham's going to face. Maybe give the edge to Notre Dame, but Notre Dame and Narbonne, both of these teams are really, I think, kind of on even planes. Notre Dame maybe an edge better, but no shout to Narbonne. They're going to beat them by a couple scores, I think.
Yeah, Notre Dame's still playing as well, so they're having a great year. I'm taking Narbonne as well. How close is this one, do you think?
Well, I think Birmingham, with that defensive showing against San Fernando, I think they can limit Narbonne somewhere around 3 or 4 touchdowns. Maybe it ends up being a 35-7 game. I don't think it's a 67-0 blowout we saw against Venice. They keep it closer than that, but it's just going to be really tough to move the football.
In the Open Division semifinals last year, Narbonne beat Fairfax 72-0. Birmingham probably won't want to hear that, but they're prepared for this game. They know what's to come. I hope it goes better than that. Number 6, Garfield at number 2, Eagle Rock. We both picked Eagle Rock earlier. Are you sticking with the Eagles?
I'm sticking with it, even though Garfield's got a great rushing attack. I think Eagle Rock, they've proven, they've been tested. They tested their mettle against Palisades, and now they get a good Garfield team. I don't think anything changes for me. Give me the Eagles.
Yeah, when we see these multifaceted offenses, looking at Birmingham against San Fernando, win, that makes me think that Eagle Rock's going to win, because
if you can do it both, it helps.
If you can do 2 things, then you have an awesome opportunity. Don't want to take anything away from that Garfield passing attack, but Eagle Rock's is clearly better, and I know the running game is probably a little bit better for Garfield, but I think because Eagle Rock can do both, I'm taking the Eagles, and they'll have a date with Narbonne, it looks like, in the Open Division Championship game. And remember, the winner of Eagle Rock and Garfield automatically qualifies for a state playoff game. Who thought these 2 teams would have a chance at that at the beginning of the year?
Yeah, huge step for the program. This is really, really big for both of these schools. I don't know when the last time they had this kind of opportunity. So no matter who wins, it's going to be a great shout to the small schools in LA City.
That's the Week 13 LA City section football video. We will see you for some semifinal action Friday. See you then.